Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, the weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. I've been having a rough, you guys already saw from last week, last couple of rough weeks, and I figured it was worth addressing here at the beginning of this episode because obviously there's been barely any content on the channel, just a quick patch update, but I figured, I finally kind of honed in on, what's been going on with me the last couple of weeks and why I've been kind of like unable to focus, unable to sleep. There's just been, I realize that it's kind of just like the post-expansion, like die down. It's like a sugar high, right as the expansion launches, I have this massive sugar high. And then, you go from those mega hype moments and kind of needing to mellow out a little bit. And I don't think I've managed to adjust to that all that well after Shadowbringers because things were really, really crazy this time around. And so I think that's kind of why I've been unable to kind of stay focused and get my energy back because it's so much less energy than I was putting into everything else that I find myself just unable to focus a lot. I actually, came to this realization because, I was taking a bit of a break. I took a day off of streaming and then I had an internet issue about an hour and a half before my normal end time. And so I cut the stream there, contacted the tech because it had actually been happening quite a bit. And so I just decided to, cut the stream for the day because I was already kind of just like in this overwhelmed mindset where I have all these ideas, but now they're piling up on top of each other. And it feels like I'll never get it done. And then you don't get something done. You feel bad for not getting it done. So then things get worse. We've all kind of been down that road before. And I actually was listening to commentary from several film creators, filmmakers, some of them more indie, like James Rolfe, the guy who does Angry Video Game Nerd, listening to a few of his commentaries. And then some more well-known, like Kevin Smith, Mallrats and Jay and Silent Bob and whatnot, who I love listening to talk about filmography and theater and stuff like that, depending on which of the two I'm listening to, and a couple of others. But right before recording this, actually kind of reinvigorated my mind a little bit to listen to them talk about crunch times and projects and fitting time in between things for themselves and stuff. So listening to those commentaries actually kind of refreshed me a little bit right before recording this. So I'm feeling a little bit better, in a little bit better of a mood. I've still got quite a hell of a month ahead of me with September, and we got to be filling that with other content as well. There's the verses, there's still individual job thought videos, which I already brought up last week. And again, just sitting on that audio, but I'm feeling a little bit better about it now. And so we'll get back on the horse this week. At the very least, doing some news-related videos, some discussion-related videos. I'm glad that I did what I did. And I think I'm going to be doing that from now on, is just listening to director and people in the film industry, listening to their commentary, because it's actually quite interesting and reinvigorating. So figured I'd give you guys a little bit of update what's going on with me, because I know some of you hop by the stream as well and have maybe seen me just kind of so hopefully things will be better this week. Final Fantasy VIII is coming out this week, the remastered one. I'm not a big Final Fantasy VIII fan. It was my first Final Fantasy, but it should still be fun. It should put me more in my element, give me a bit more of a comfort zone to work with than classic WoW and Astral Chain, which very, very different for me personally, at least from recent years. With that, I want to give a shout out to the patrons, as we do. They've been awesome. They are another, they along with everyone who watches, big motivating factors for me to make sure that you guys aren't disappointed. That being said, we have the list, as we've been doing. Of course, we have our Patrons of Darkness. We have Khuja on Jenova and Kurenai Oni, two who have been massive supporters through me through all sorts of thick and thin over the last year or so. So a big shout out to them as well. Looking forward to being less disappointing going into the month of September. It's the first day of the month as I'm recording this, so let's make it a good rest of the month. But with that, let's get to some questions, and then I'm gonna go order a pizza to really put my mood at maximum going into a Monday this week. All right, let's say question number one, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Been watching, hello to you too, by the way. Been watching your content since the early days of Realm Reborn. Appreciate your work. Thank you. Keep it up. I will. I promise I'll get back to it. I was wondering how you felt about a PvP-enabled zone specifically to provide hardcore PvPers for something to do PvP-oriented between queues. I have a feeling that would greatly help unite the PvP community and possibly help grow its player base. Would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you. So I'm never against things like this because you're asking for an addition to the game. Some people, they ask for, worlds to be completely transformed into, permanently enable world PvP. I think at the very least, I really want dueling to be possible anywhere or to have designated areas like it does with Triple Triad. The game is just so not built that way, though. Zones that have PvP enabled are just either hard coded. You know, your action bars have to be entirely different. So your idea is a decent alternative, and we kind of have it with the Wolves Den Pier, but it's not really what you're asking for. So I'm never against things like this. I say yes, you know, sure, why not? You know, with playing Classic WoW in the last week and being on a PvP realm and getting my shit pushed in constantly because I'm just like, listen, I'm just trying to quest. My guild wanted to go to a PvP server. I'll wave. Maybe they'll know I don't mean any harm. And then that's just their way of, oh, alliance. Every time. It's actually made me, a lot of people said, why don't they just take some PvP servers, take some servers on 14 and make them PvP, and it got me discussing a lot about the whole opt-in. You know, people are like, oh, it's so dumb that you can get ganked in the open world and you're just trying to quest them. Like, they're like, and they don't even have to, like, you know, ask you if you want a PvP, and I'm like, they did ask you when you made the character and you opted into it on the character selection and the realm selection screen. So I'm creating segments of that, either creating servers where that kind of thing is enabled or creating a zone. Something I'm never going to be against. People meme on PvP in Final Fantasy 14, but doing less doesn't help, and doing more, in some people's opinion, might not help. But I at least want the people who enjoy PvP in 14 to feel like they can do that reasonably. Oh boy, I was going to scroll past this one, and then I saw how much text there was. So, you know what? Let's give it a shot. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, Mr. Happy. Hello. How do you handle this incarnation of the dreaded Monday? Normally, Mondays don't bother me. This month, because of, like, the reset of my mindset, like, as I talked about from right before the video, it just happens to be that this is going to come out on the Monday where I'm talking about that. So, otherwise, Mondays are usually just fine for me. 2 topics for you. Feel free to pick and choose what you like to answer. So I saw how much text there was. The first question here is about practicing versus learning when it comes to game mechanics, but it didn't really seem as much like a question. It seemed more like just a general statement. So the second thing actually seemed like a question to me, so I'm going to take that. With the major part of progression for almost all players being done in Eden Savage, what is your general opinion of the importance of gear in this tier of content? My experience was quite harsh as long as you did not play Black Mage. Yeah. People I played with, including myself, did not bother with buying crafted gear and went into E2 Savage with only Eden Normal 450. You probably weren't even full Eden 450. You couldn't have been by the time the second week rolled around, even with the changes to the way it works. So, what do I feel about the importance of gear? So gear is always something that allows you to circumvent player skill to some degree. Even in something as severe as E2 Savage, it is doable with the gear that people were having. You know, it is a recommended item level of 445, and without crafted gear, that was roughly possible before that came out. And that was what I had when I beat E2 Savage, even if it was, you know, a little bit tight. That being said, I'd say that E2 in particular has a little bit more of a gear requirement in the sense that the average skill of somebody going into E2 Savage, you know, someone who's newer to Final Fantasy 14 or someone who, you know, just uses the party finder, and again, I'm using the average, not like your higher tier player, was probably not able to circumvent the DPS requirement of E2 Savage without a little bit of help. So I don't think calling it a gear requirement to me isn't right, but how much gear assistance people needed for this raid tier, I felt it was higher than previous raid tiers. It probably wasn't, but it was probably that it was higher earlier, something like E2 as opposed to, you know, E3 or 4, where some people would at least begin to have that expectation. In fact, E2 for a lot of people has a way more severe DPS check than E3, and we talked about that, I think, last week or the week before. Or no, I talked about it in my thoughts on Eden's Gate Savage video, where I talked about the loop of an encounter, the feedback loop of how it lets you know you've progressed forward, in E2 having a very drag your way through it kind of style, which makes it kind of, you know, degrade on someone's mentality when they can't get through it or they constantly hit in rage. So I think that it's okay that they did that. I think it really gets people a little bit more in the mindset of improving themselves, or maybe motivates a player to acquire more gear over the weeks if they're someone who hasn't cleared it or is doing it through the party finder. But my experience is jaded because I have not used the party finder for E2 Savage. So I may just be having that kind of completely neutral, didn't do it, but looking at it objectively stance. And I don't think that actually represents what most people are probably thinking. They're probably thinking, why the hell is this so much worse than 1? And then you get to 3 and you're like, why was 2 so much harder than 3? But there's a whole lot of things that go into it. And if you watch my video on my thoughts on this tier for Savage, you'll get a much more in-depth answer than what I'm able to provide to you in a Monday video. Now, this one's very short, so I'm going to take this one next. Right under it, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Haps, the Hap, Happinacious, Hapamundo, the Happening Hap. By the time you read this, I hope you're doing better than last Monday. Oh, is that going to be the new thing? We're going to just give me a million nicknames for Hap? I'm cool with that. Quick and easy question. Which do you prefer personally and why? Legacy or Standard? And which would you recommend to others and why? I recommend Legacy because it's the way I'm used to playing all the other tab target MMOs that I've played in my life. Now, I actually do... I'm sorry. Let me rephrase. I play Standard because of that reason. Legacy, I think, makes a lot of sense. I specifically untrained myself from Legacy play because of earlier days in Final Fantasy XIV. So nowadays in 14, you don't need to be looking at a target to auto-attack it. But back when I started in 2.0 and 3.0, you did. You needed to be looking at a target to auto-attack it. And when that was a thing, you know, I was playing Bard or I was playing Ninja, and the idea of walking backwards and turning my character away was bad because I had to do it between auto attacks, and it was just one more thing I really didn't want to have to keep track of, and it mattered to me from a min-max standpoint. So I untrained myself from the 2.0 and 3.0 days from using Legacy and making sure that, you know, because of World of Warcraft and the many other tab target MMOs I've played, that I got used to standard controls. Nowadays, that doesn't matter because you will auto attack as long as you are in auto attack range for your job. So I personally think Legacy is the better option, but now I'm so muscle memory to Standard that I'm probably never going to go back. All right, next one, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, how you doing? I'm good, and you? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. What are your thoughts on the glowy weapons for Dancer and Gunbreaker? What glowy weapons? That's a real question, because there really aren't any. So, unless you're talking about E4, is that glowy? I don't even think that glows. Will they increase Dancer's potency as well as the others? Also, I'm thinking of leveling another class and leaning toward Ninja or Monk, which you prefer. You loaded 3 questions in. I took this because it was short. There were 3 questions loaded in there. Will they increase Dancer's potency? Based on the feedback people are providing, there's a high probability. You know, they're pretty good at taking feedback and actually integrating it when it comes to what the players want. And they've shown a much better propensity for that, for the most part, minus a couple of things. So I'm curious to see if they will take a look at the range physical role, or if they'll take a look at the powerhouses like Monk, Black Mage, and now Ninja and potentially Dragoon, and I wonder which one they see as the one that needs to be adjusted. I think the top end is actually a little bit too top heavy right now, but I also don't think that means that you can leave range physical alone. We'll see which direction that they want to take. Dancer, there's a few other things I'd change about it. Potency isn't the first thing, but I wouldn't be surprised at this point, based on player feedback, to see Dancer potency go up, as well as the other range physical DPS, by the way. I think all 3 of them, based on player feedback, might be seeing a buff in the future. Also thinking of leveling another class leaning towards Nin and Monk. So Nin and Monk are both janky as fuck right now. Monk has the whole Anatman thing where people are downloading third-party programs to give them server tick information so they can properly do the Anatman opener. Ninja has just been a cluster to play ever since Shadowbringers came out, but now they've been buffed so subsequently that they are insanely powerful while they're waiting for the actual rework of the way that Mudras are supposed to work. So Ninja's payoff for its complexity is actually pretty not standard, I was gonna say, rewarding at this point if you're someone who can pull it off. So I'd say Monk's probably the easier to play of the 2, you know, even with the whole Anatman thing. So if you're looking for something easier to play and you want to get into, Monk is probably going to be your answer. All right, on to the next question. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. My first time asking a question here. Hello to you, by the way. Been following and watching your vids ever since I started playing 14, and you've never let me down. Keep up the good work. You got it. My question for you is, how do you choose your main job to raid with during the beginning of a raid tier? Main tank, and I've had this dilemma of deciding whether I will go Warrior, Paladin, or Dark Knight. This first Eden tier, I've gone with Warrior, and that is my main, but now that I've cleared it, I'm now playing Dark Knight and learning to optimize damage, and potentially playing Paladin as OT later. I enjoy all the jobs very much, just can't stick to one job for very long. I may play Gunbreaker, but now it feels like too much of a task to learn to optimize it. I know you played Dancer in Eden Prog, any chance of going back and playing the new Monk now I got buffed? Thanks for taking time to answer your question. So how do I pick one at the beginning? I personally look at what I want to play the most. I used to straight up ask my raid groups, what do you want me to play? It never once led to me playing the job that I actually wanted to play in raids. It was always, well, what has the most gear? You know, what do we need? Like, what does everyone else who's already picked their role want to play? And then you just fill in the rest. And so I've never really had a comfortable time picking a main until I went into Stormblood and I said, I will play Monk this expansion. That is what I will play. And I did it. I went through the whole expansion playing that one job. Then I looked at how rigid of a structure that was of only playing one job, because I just didn't want to play Ninja. I didn't enjoy Dragoon or Samurai, and I really didn't enjoy the ranged physical role at that point. Bard I enjoyed, but not Machinist. And honestly, Bard was kind of just, it wasn't something I wanted to raid on. It was just something that I was okay playing. So going into Shadowbringers, I actually picked my main job, and the way I went about it this time around was, what was a role, a complete role I was willing to play. And I looked at ranged physical and said, you know what, Machinist is a lot of fun, Dancer is a lot of fun. Once again, Bard, I can play it if it's the thing that, the group wants me to do. Gonna be my last choice always. I just don't think it's as fun as the other two. But given a choice, I set a priority for myself, Dancer over Machinist over Bard. And then, of course, taking into consideration what the raid group actually needs. So, with all that in mind, that's how I've gone into it this time, and that's how I'm planning on going into it in the future, is picking a role. Now, you've already done that because you've picked Tank, and you've just having a hard time deciding which one you want to consider your main. I think Tank is a role. Tank and Ranged Physical are two roles, as a matter of fact, where it's very easy to just say you're going to play all three. Or you're going to play, all of the jobs available in that role. Because the gear is very interchangeable. The BIS lists are very interchangeable between the set, obviously with Warrior being the exception for tanks. And so with that in mind, I think it makes the decision a lot easier. So, but for the individual job, I think you've already got it covered. You're willing to play, multiple tanks, and sometimes you just want to play other ones because, you might just want to try something new. And I think that's a great flexibility to have, and it's a great mentality to have going into Final Fantasy XIV rating. As for going back to Monk for me, I don't think so. Not as long as that Anotman thing's there. I hate the idea of needing to download third-party add-ons to play something efficiently. It's one thing to want to track your progress with Advanced Combat Tracker. It's another thing to have this thing tracking the server tick, and for this to be a mandatory tool for you to play optimally. You can have somebody else do it in your group for you, but at that point, the tool is still there. It still needs to be used. And I just don't approve of that kind of design, so by not playing the job, I'm kind of going against them having the job designed in that manner. That's just my choice, though. All right, next one. Hashtag Mondays with Mrhappy 122. Don't add the numbers. Don't do that. Hey, Abs, how you doing? Second time asking, so no bonus. Sorry. We'll talk about the market board. Do you think we'll ever see Square Enix implementing a system where you can give buy orders to your retainers? As I proposed, we could apply the Gil Entrusted to a retainer and place the orders to buy at a given price. If said item is currently unavailable or at too high a price, then the player could choose to sell directly to us or given the price to keep to a higher value or wait for another buyer. Even better if they'd allow us to buy a fraction of the stack offered instead. What's being suggested here, the main reason they probably would like to avoid it is it's very automated. There's very little, the player basically is setting up a bot in the form of their retainer in this case, and the retainer will take care of everything else based on the conditions. If you don't like the term bot, then a gambit more accurately. There are people across many different MMOs who use bots that are very much like this in order to play to play the market board. They don't actually want to request an item that they need. They want to specifically look for a threshold in which they can purchase an item and then resell it. And then that becomes the very next question is, can you set up the retainer to do the selling as well as the buying automatically if the item comes into the inventory when they buy it? Because if you're willing to automate the buying, why would you not be willing to automate the selling? And then it becomes this whole huge moral contradiction within the system itself that creates problems. They definitely want players to be making that conscious decision actively and to have to actually go to the market boards and participate in that part of the game. They don't want retainers to be able to fill that and do it automatically. So that would be my guess, because from a game design standpoint, that's what makes the most sense to me. Sometimes automation is okay with certain things, quality of life and, all that nonsense. But sometimes there's a point where, technically bots are quality of life. People could argue, because it's doing something automatically for you so you don't have to. That is a quality of life thing to do. And it starts getting to that gray line where it's like, maybe you shouldn't go that far, and I think this starts to tout that line. I don't think it really adds any dynamics or anything like that, and I'm sure on top of that, as you've probably suggested, that the code definitely doesn't allow it. They'd have to spend a lot of time making it work for something that probably isn't overall healthy for the game. And the next one, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. First time asking, so I have a bonus of getting more time to talk to Yoshi P. If I could sit down and pick that man's brain for a whole day, holy moly, he will never have the time to do that. So the dungeons in this, by the way, hello. I think people are saying hello less on purpose. So the dungeons in this expansion I felt had a strong theming as well, with the exception of the 53. Listen, 63, I would have been like, it was last expansion. It's just a few months ago. No, you went back to Heavensward with that one. The 73 dungeon. Don't worry, I'm just giving you a hard time. Each one felt like we were doing something to progress the story rather than faffing about. Do you foresee that dungeons in the next few expansions will follow this more? I think dungeons in general are going to follow this more. They specifically stated that dungeons, they've realized at this point, the dungeon is a skin on top of a formula. The dungeons are always going to function a relatively similar way. So how do you make that dungeon exciting? If it's going to be effectively the same content, you need to create an environment that's compelling to the player. Places like the Twinning, Amarot, even Holminster Switch, there's some sort of element to it that gives it this sort of urgency and this dangerous feeling, this reason of being there. You can look at places like what's the name? The name's escaping me at this point. Make a gif of that. I can't remember the name of the dungeon. Academia. There we go. I don't know why I couldn't get Academia just out from my brain into my mouth. Even just seeing things like the citizens fleeing, like little things like that add elements to the dungeon, adds personality to the individual skin that they've created for that. So I think that's going to be the thing going forward. It's not just about whether or not we're faffing around. We're not faffing around in any of those dungeons. They all serve a purpose, whether or not it's super urgent. But to create that environment that very much feels like the dungeon itself has a personality, that seems to be what they're aiming for. As for a Lightworn Ultimate, they have shown no propensity for making ultimates out of content that is not innately 8-man content. Some might argue Ifrit, Garuda, and Titan all had 4-man equivalents, especially because those are the story equivalents we follow, but they also had 8-man equivalents with which the content was based off of. Until we see something like a Crystal Tower Ultimate, or a Void Scent Ultimate with like Diablos or something, or until we see something from 4-man content potentially, I will think that every ultimate they want to make is them repurposing other 8-man content, whether it be primals, story trials, or the overarching raid. I am very much for them doing things like that. I'd love to see them, be a little bit more open to new ideas with ultimates, like I said, pulling from dungeons or pulling from the 24-man raids. But I am not confident that's going to happen at the current time. All right, on to the next one. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Long time lurker. First time question. Hello. Hi. I'm saying hello to you. This is human interaction where I say hello and you're like, hey. And I'm like, hey. And we're just... Bonus of aloha, not blowing up on video or stream. Good. Yeah, I don't know what he's doing right now. He's not even in here. Question is about raid strats. Now, I know this may be more of a personal issue, but at what point do you think it's you have to stick to a strat, even if it's suboptimal, to see how a fight works? I've had issues in my group with people wanting to change everything after every pull, and people are struggling to see a mechanic correctly, leading to people quitting when told to see the fight versus change things for parse. So I'm always of the opinion that changing things for parse is something you generally do either after you've already cleared and everyone's comfortable with spending some time changing the strategy for that, or you do that when you start hitting in rage. If you go, okay, so we're hitting in rage now, what can we do to improve DPS? Can somebody call something out? Is there a positioning thing that we can do differently? But generally, when it comes to changing strat, most of the time people do it not just to get the better parse, they do it because they are more comfortable. I think I've spoken about this, and I think maybe like 3 or 4 weeks ago, but sometimes people have this like way to dodge that they always want to try to dodge a mechanic that way, and that getting them to change their ways, it's never good for the raiding scene, but it happens. Getting them to change their ways just doesn't work. Like, let's say that you progress a raid and you in your raid group always dodge a mechanic to the east. It doesn't matter what mechanic it is. Now let's say that maybe that raid group doesn't work out, you break up, you go to another raid group, and that raid group wants you to dodge west. Now what happens probably for most people the first couple pulls is they dodge east anyway and they get people killed. And then either, you know, they make the adjustment and they go west, but some people prefer to go, can I just dodge east instead? I want to dodge east. I just need to dodge east. And so a lot of the times people want to make adjustments so that they can, you know, get into that comfort zone because they are used to always dodging a certain way. You know, that can even be like what flank of the boss you prefer to do positionals on. You know, it's all sorts of little things. I gotta stop playing with this little magnet right here because I keep making the clicking noise. So I think that when it's getting people comfortable to clear a fight, making rapid changes in strategy is okay. I think taking every single pull though is a bit overkill. Then when it comes to optimizing for parse, I definitely say for me at the very least, I am a firm believer that's something you really do when either you need to improve DPS substantially or you've already cleared the fight and you just want to get a better parse. I think that doing it and spending every little effort on doing it before you've even cleared is just more effort than it's worth when you have not even beaten the fight yet. All right, kind of like last week, I was scrolling through questions and I had a lot of repeat, like not questions from previous weeks that we're trying to ask, and it was like questions that I've answered a lot of in previous weeks. Last week seems like some people kind of enjoyed my whole rapid fire answer section. Some of these I actually already answered, but like I have one here. Will you do an updated versus series? Yes. Is there a place to ask me discussion topics? I mean, that's the whole point of Mondays with Mrhappy. I mean, if I like it and I make a discussion video out of it, that's cool. Do you think that White Mage should replace Fluid Aura with an OGCD AoE water spell? I actually miss the days of Fluid Aura being an OGCD DPS skill, but probably not. I think White Mage has got enough OGCD skills that they really don't need any help with any more of them. What's another one that's here? Let's see. I know there was another one that I skipped over because I didn't really have. Should Keisha Higginbana be its own dot? I mean, they could if they wanted to force it to be in the meta. I don't, you know, I agree that's kind of pointless the way it is now, but I don't really know if that's the right choice either. Why are ranged mitigation skills not a role action? Great question. I completely agree. It doesn't make any sense, and I'm sure there's an answer. Maybe it's because they're learned at different levels, and it's depending on the importance of it. I don't know. It's got to be one of those. You know, it's got to be something like that. What's another one right here? Why is Red Mage hampered so much? When it just because it has the res, and I mean that's the answer, but honestly I think Red Mage just needs to be more exciting to play, more so than the raise being this thing that holds it back, but that's just my opinion. Let's see, start running static with Machinist, Gaussran, and Ricochet. Do you think auto crossbow should as well? I think auto crossbow resetting Ricochet maybe makes sense, but either way, I don't think that's a core issue with Machinist, so I'm not 100% sure that one's really super important for me. What gear should I get as my White Mage? Item level matters over anything else, and I believe all the healers are running crit right now, so crit melds are probably the way to go. I think it's crit, determination, spell speed in that order, but don't quote me on that. I would go check out the balance Discord. Do you think we'll get a collaboration when Final Fantasy VII collab comes out? 50-50 on it. We have a lot of Final Fantasy VII stuff already in-game, and the Cloud hairstyle is currently exclusive to contest winners, so not really sure if they'll do something like an Aerith outfit or something along those lines. Although I think now that I said it out loud, that's if it was going to be anything, it would actually be that. Have they ever buffed DPS limit breaks from 2.0's release? They've changed the potencies around a little bit. The caster and ranged one are the same potency now. The ranged one used to be weaker than the caster one. I know that much has changed at the very least. What's it called? Is there anything other ones here that I could do? Where should I go to learn openers and stuff? I mentioned the balance Discord. You know, it's a big long question about Monk and improving on that. Although there's of course a ton of other things you can do from there. Yeah, so there's a lot of them. So you can see I can get some of these out for the rapid fire answers in case they're ones that I've covered, you know, recently, or you know I answer them all the time. But for the most part, I'd say that we're done with Mondays with Mrhappy for the week. So anyway, thank you for watching this episode of Mondays with Mrhappy. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and hopefully you didn't find my kind of mopey entry into the video. If you have a question, be sure to ask it in the comment section of this video for next week's Mondays with Mrhappy. And again, thank you to our patrons of Light and Darkness. I am going to be doing a somewhat sponsored video sometime this week. I had a company called Loot Cave, and I'm specifically bringing up that a company sent me something because I've been in this mood. I haven't made the video for it yet, and they've been super kind, and they already sent me the product, so I brought it up in State of the Realm. But Loot Cave, they make custom video game accessories, and they made jobstones, and they sent me a few. So I'm going to do a little sponsored video for that, just to show that off, because I love that I love that kind of stuff. You know, I've gotten a lot of great gifts from people who do these kind of shops before, and so Loot Cave sending me the job stones for Dancer and Gunbreaker in necklace form and in keychain form was something that was super welcome. So I'm bringing them up now. I'll include a link to them in the description, but I am going to do a standalone video talking about that kind of stuff and talking about them, or at least including them in another video on top of this one. But I feel so bad for not doing the video yet that I just want to bring it up. I actually don't have them handy. They're actually in the other room. I probably should have had them for this section, but all the same, thanks to them. And thanks again to our patrons of darkness. And of course, our patrons overall. So anyway, I'm going to go get that pizza, play a little bit more classic WoW for the evening. Almost level 35 on my Paladin. And I'll see you guys for next week's episode. Don't forget, we got Air Zivia this week for State of the Realm as well. Anyway, thanks for watching. And until next time, take care.